Hello, welcome to LifeTalk for November 27th, 2018. I'm Mark Crutcher, and as usual, I'm joined by the usual suspects. Renee Hobbs, my worthy assistant here at Life Dynamics.
Hello.
And my worthy daughter, Sheila.
Yes, I am the worthy daughter.
We're very worthy.
Unworthy. Yeah. Got a lot to get to today, so let's get right after it. And there's a lot of things. First off, the CDC reports a drop in the abortion rate to historically low levels, and obviously that's a good thing.
Good news.
Fewer babies being butchered.
Very good news.
But we need to drill down a little bit into these stats. First off, the stats that they give out are, even they admit, are wrong because three or four states, the biggest one being California, which has more abortions than any other state in the union,
Yes.
doesn't report their numbers to
Right.
the CDC. They
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't report morbidity, injuries, mortality rates, anything.
Right.
California does not report. The
Yeah,
same thing is true about Maryland and New Hampshire. But anyway, it's still good news because they didn't report in the previous years either. So,
Well, and this doesn't actually include birth control and the morning after pill either.
Right.
Those are both abortions.
Right.
And
Yep.
Unfortunately, the Plan B is sold at Walmart's. Child predators can go in there anytime they want to
Right.
give to their perpetrators. So
yeah, well, we said all
Or
along
victim.
that this would be the greatest thing that ever happened to men who sexually assault children.
Yes.
Is Plan B, and that's
Yes.
what it's being used for.
But I would like to note one thing.
What's that?
This has to do with incremental pro-life legislation that is being passed.
Right.
Like the heartbeat bill that we talked about last
That's right.
episode.
That's right.
Until
Exactly.
we can get it completely
Right.
illegal and no more abortion, this is what has to happen.
And, it is good news. Abortion rate has been going lower and lower, much to the chagrin of the abortion industry.
Right.
And like you said, this was not including California or other states that don't report to the CDC.
But it's still good news.
And it's still good news, but that doesn't mean that we can quit. We still have to
No.
keep on going until every baby
No,
is
this
safe.
is an indicator we need to ratchet up.
Yeah, because the other side is starting to
Again,
get
it's like in
more
boxing.
angry.
You know, like in boxing, I was always coached, when you hit your opponent and you see their knees buckle, you don't back off. You move in for the kill.
Oh, yeah.
Right. A couple of things I want to point out about this CDC study. First off, something we've talked about here, and we documented in Maafa 21, is how blacks have been targeted. White abortion rate per 1,000 white women is 6.8 abortions per 1,000. The black abortion rate is 25.1 per 1,000.
Yeah.
And this is a direct result of the fact that the abortion industry has targeted
Yes.
the black community. We
right.
proved it in Maafa 21.
Yes.
We put out a report
Yes.
based on
Racial targeting.
racial targeting
Yes.
report that you can read online, and it's based on figures from the Census Bureau, the United States Census Bureau.
Zip codes.
They have been targeted.
Yes.
And the result
absolutely.
is their abortion rate is over 3 times as high as the white abortion rate.
Right.
There's something else that's interesting here, is the disparity between one state and the next. The lowest abortion rate per 1,000 was in South Dakota, 2.8 abortions per 1,000 people. New York comes in at 23.1.
That's high.
And I think, you don't want to be disparaging to other places, but I think most people would agree. California and New York have the highest abortion rates per 1,000.
Right.
New York is the highest. They're probably the most unchristian states in the country.
Most liberal states, yeah.
There's got to be a connection.
Liberal.
And it was 97, I think, is when California decided to stop reporting all of that,
Right.
the abortion rate mortality. And I'm not sure, I guess it was a law that was passed or something. There's a question on here, how can they not report? Isn't that against the law? So,
No, it's not against the law. Reporting to the CDC is a purely voluntary thing by the states. And all the states except for these few, including California, which is the #1 abortion state in the country, everybody else has chosen to report, but they have not.
Yes.
And I think part of it is because, and they're certainly not going to start now, that California is allowing non-doctors to do abortions.
Yes.
So the last thing they want to have is their morbidity and mortality rates put out in front of the American people.
Yeah. There's a reason why they're
Oh, yeah.
not reporting.
These things don't happen for no reason. Secondly, we're going to talk about a Planned Parenthood thing on CBS. But first, we weren't going to talk about this, but I've got to get this in. Because I keep on seeing this stuff about what a moral woman Michelle Obama is and how she's just a spectacular, sterling woman. She was doing an interview in the Washington Post, and she talks about her
Her miscarriage.
miscarriage. And she's basically talking about how she went from being broken about this and to really seeing it for what it was. I want you to hear what she said. It's regardless how utterly devastating it feels at the moment. It is not devastating. Quote, talking about it with other women helped her see that, quote, what she'd been through was no more than a normal biological hiccup, a fertilized egg that for what was probably a very good reason, had needed to bail out.
So the egg decided,
I got to bail out of here.
Yeah.
I got problems. I got to bail out. This is the most unbelievable
And
thing.
compassionate and caring.
Tell that to the women who have had, miscarriages.
Yeah.
Tell them that
I've been
to
through
their
that.
face.
Well, and that's what I was saying is most women that talk about their miscarriages, they have a hard time talking about it, and
Right.
of course they would.
Right.
They
Also-
But she, on the other hand, is like, oh, it just had to bail out. See you
had to bail
later.
out.
Well, of course, she has to say that to back her pro-abortion
Right.
Husband.
Her
beliefs.
radical
Yeah.
pro-abortion.
Yeah.
Michelle Obama is a radical pro-abort. She's not just a pro-abort.
And I mean, even like in nature, you see, animals that have lost their babies and they mourn.
They mourn over it.
Yeah.
That's
So,
right.
so
A
the
dog
reason,
will.
so the reason she's saying this is that can't be true. She's just having to say that because of her to back her pro-abortion beliefs.
And it's a good example of what I've said. We've said on here many times, abortion has, within a certain segment of the American female population, destroyed their maternal instincts. No woman with halfway decent maternal instincts would say that.
Ever,
Yeah.
Ever
say that.
Now, speaking of moral defectives, pro-abortion moral defectives, Planned Parenthood has a new president, Leanna Wen, and she was on CBS this morning television show, and of course they're lauding her as this new champion for women and so forth. It's interesting to note here that never once, now understand, Planned Parenthood is the nation's #1 abortion provider, right?
which
they do more
they
abortions.
like to deny.
But it was. They are.
They are.
Yeah.
They never mentioned abortion once in this interview on CBS. Not only that, this woman is a medical doctor. She's a physician.
And she's from China, where they had a one-child policy,
Right.
or now two-child policy. But
They never once mentioned abortion, and they never once asked her if she had ever personally done abortions. Never was brought up. And this is a perfect example. The reason this wasn't brought up is because obviously CBS is on the side of Planned Parenthood.
Sure.
And for PR.
For public relations. But it was never brought up because of the stigma of abortion. And we have stated here many times, that is the #1 weapon that the pro-life movement has, bar none, is the stigma of abortion. And it's never going away as long as we do our job.
Right.
It's like the stigma that's attached to prostitution or to pornography. They're endemic. They're part of the mix.
and they can try their hardest
And it will
to
never
try to
go
do
away.
away with it.
Well,
but it's
It'll never go away.
And that's why they Planned Parenthood probably brought a doctor in the first place, is to help with that stigma. They say, who better to know than a medical doctor,
Right, yeah.
So
It's obscene,
Yes.
but stigma is the big deal here.
It is.
And we're going to take a break for RoeBots here in a second. And when we come back, we're going to talk about this stigma issue again, and we're going to talk about how people in their local community can help advance the cause of the stigmatizing abortion, continue that, because the abortion industry is out here openly stating that they are trying to do away with the stigma of abortion. They recognize that it's their biggest problem.
and they openly admit it.
And they openly admit it. Anyway, let's take a moment out for RoeBots, and we'll come back and talk about that again.
In 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court legalized abortion nationwide. The decision is called Roe versus Wade, and those who defend it are known as RoeBots. This is how they think.
Even if the unborn are human beings, the important issue is that they are not persons.
Throughout history, Whenever one group of people has wanted to justify exterminating or brutalizing another group of people, they will always describe their victims in ways that are designed to take away their humanity. The process is called dehumanization, and it is the strategy savages have always used to make their particular brand of barbarism seem acceptable. And the abortion holocaust is no different. In Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court ruled that states cannot prohibit abortion because the unborn are not, quote, persons in the whole sense, unquote. In other words, the court concluded that whether the unborn are living human beings or not is somehow irrelevant. It's okay to kill them by the millions as long as they're not really persons. And it is the killers who get to decide whether they are persons or not. It is exactly what the court did in their 1857 Dred Scott decision when they ruled that slavery was constitutional because blacks were not citizens of the United States, and therefore the Constitution did not apply to them. These rationalizations are textbook examples of what George Orwell meant when he said that some things are so stupid only intellectuals could believe them. The reality is, this bizarre concept that someone can be a partial person or a non-person does not exist in the real world. In fact, the English language does not have a word for a human being who is not a person. In the case of abortion, the question I want to hear someone answer is this: what is added to a fetus at birth that makes it a person if it wasn't a person before? Welcome back. Again, back on this subject of stigma, there are not only ways you can exacerbate the stigma, but you can capitalize on the stigma that already exists. Several years ago, I was contacted by a pro-life activist named Charlie Wysong in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I'd known Charlie for forever. He's a good guy. Anyway, they had he had set it up as his goal to make Chattanooga abortionist-free. And he had set his goal to say, we're going to make Chattanooga completely devoid of abortionists. At one time there were 7. He had gotten it down to 1 or 2, I think, at that time.
Impressive.
Yeah, it was. And we helped him with a lot of strategies and so forth to do that. One of these abortion clinics had lost their lease and stated in the newspaper they were out looking for another place to lease. And Charlie contacted me, and I said, well, we've got a campaign that we've been pushing called No Place to Rent. And I said, we can capitalize on the stigma. And basically what it is we send direct mail. We make a mailing list of all the commercial real estate agents in the area. Yes. And we send them all a letter saying, hey, there's somebody out looking for a place to put an abortion clinic. You need to be very wary of this. And here are the reasons why. And the thing that's most important to understand here is, and why we need to do this, is because very often these abortion mills will look for a new place, but when they go, they know that they better not tell the landowner that it's going to be an abortion clinic.
That's right. Because who would want to rent to an abortion clinic? Yeah.
So they will say it's a medical clinic or a women's clinic or an OBGYN facility or whatever, never mention abortion. They get a contract, a lease with the landowner. The landowner finds out it's an abortion clinic, and there's nothing he can do.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
And we had seen situations like this where the landowners were actually hardcore pro-life and had no idea that and all of a sudden they're owners of an abortion clinic, basically.
Right.
So we send out a letter that warns people about that, and we also give them sample language in the letter that they can put in their leases that prohibit their space from being used to do abortions. Right. And so we started sending these out, and the result was that the last 2 abortion clinics in Chattanooga closed down because they couldn't find new places to rent. And they openly stated it in the media that they just couldn't find anybody that would lease them a facility. Yeah. So we know this project works, and we've done it in other places.
Effective.
Yeah, it's very effective, and we've used it in other places. And the neat thing about it is there's nothing the abortion industry can do to stop it. It's perfectly legal. They cannot stop it, and it works.
Right, because you can't make a law that says, oh, you have to rent to an abortion facility.
Right. Well, you could, but there's not one. I mean, maybe somebody will try that at some point.
Oh, I shouldn't have said anything.
But anyway, we know that it works, and it's perfectly legal. And the other thing about it is, compared to most things that the pro-life movement gets involved in, it's very cheap. It's dirt cheap. You bought the mailing list that we're about to talk about. What did that mailing list cost? Do you remember?
Oh, gosh.
It was less than $200.
It was less than $200, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We recently saw an article in the newspaper from Wilkes-Bare, Pennsylvania, saying that a Planned Parenthood had been evicted after 84 years. And the Planned Parenthood people are openly stating they're out looking for another facility.
Yeah, and they didn't actually do the abortions in the clinic.
Right.
But they
referred.
But they referred. Yes, they're
part of the chain.
They're still part of the chain. But they told them just they said a couple of months ago that they were going to start actually doing the surgical abortions.
Right. But it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
If you're a
but-
referral, you're part of the deal.
That's right.
And, I've often made the point, if I say to you, did Adolf Hitler murder 6 million Jews?
Well, not directly.
He
but
didn't murder anybody
indirectly,
that we know of.
he did.
The only person that we know that Adolf Hitler ever murdered is himself.
I just thought it was interesting how when they said that they were going to start doing the abortions themselves, they bailed out of it. They were like, I'm done.
Right.
But,
Right. But the point is,
yeah,
Hitler didn't murder anybody.
right.
He just referred them.
That's right.
He referred the Jews to the
just
death
as
camps,
bad.
and he made it legal for them to do it. Well, that's what Planned Parenthood does.
That's right.
In the end,
exactly.
killing
worked
still
it-
takes place.
They work to keep abortion legal, and they refer people to the places where it is done. Even if they don't do it themselves, they're responsible for it.
That's right, exactly.
So anyway, we took it upon ourselves to buy a mailing list
Yes.
of all the commercial real estate people within about
I think it was a 30-mile radius.
30-mile radius, something like that. And we sent them the letter. And one of the things that's funny about this is that this always gets in the hands of people at these real estate agencies that are pro-aborts. And what they do is they call the media and say, oh, you got to stop these idiots from Texas, and
Right.
they're coming into Pennsylvania, and they're doing this, that, and the other.
None of their business.
The result of that was the local newspaper in Wilkes-Bare called us,
Yes.
and they were going to do an article about it, and we talked to them. You and I talked with them, and they did an article about it. Well, what that does then is our 200-person mailing list now is 35,000. That's the
Thank you for the free
advertising.
advertising there.
Right. But the pro-aborts can never resist attacking us over this.
Oh, yeah.
But it makes them so angry. I had a few of them call me. And what makes them, and I've had these people call and say, I am prohibiting you from ever again mailing to anybody in this state. Well, really? How? And you can do that. How? You can't even prevent me from mailing to you.
Yeah, it's almost like I dare you to try to
Right.
prohibit me.
And we have. And we may mail again up here. But the point is that this project works very well.
Yes.
It capitalizes on the stigma, and it reinforces the stigma, and it ratchets the stigma up.
And plus, it lets people in the community know, and so they can start, protesting
Right.
this.
Exactly. And the thing about it is, we've been talking here lately on the show, we've been putting out a lot of things that people can do in their local communities. They don't have to be national leaders and run a pro-life organization or whatever. This is a very simple project to do. It's cheap to do. It's legal. It's nonviolent. Anybody can do it.
Right.
And we will help. The letter that we've been putting on the screen is the letter we actually mailed to Wilkes-Bare. But if somebody wants to do this in their local community, they've got an abortion clinic that's shutting down
Right.
and looking for another place to move, or one that's saying, we're going to open up a facility in your community, you need to be doing this no place to rent campaign.
Absolutely.
And
plus,
we will help. If you contact us, we will develop a letter specifically for your area for free. We'll give it to you and tell you how to generate a mailing list, and also give you some other hints about how you make this project effective. And it does work. and it ratchets up the stigma of abortion in your community.
And plus, people need to be looking out because all the time abortion clinics are threatening to open in
Right.
communities, or they're, threatening to move. And so this isn't, just something that happens once in a blue moon. It's something that happens all the time. So people need to keep their antennas up to stuff like that.
tell you
Well, and just like what the new president of Planned Parenthood said, she said that she was going to expand abortion clinics. So,
Right.
I mean, whether that's true or not, but just keep an eye out.
Yeah, well, and that's another thing I wanted to bring up. If you're going to expand abortion clinics, you got to have more abortionists, right?
There's an issue.
When people in the medical community see the stigma that's attached, if you're just going to do abortions, these people are going to come after you. Your name's going to be in the newspaper, and people are going to be picketing and protesting. Real estate agents are saying, we're not going to rent to you because we own the building next door, and they don't want an abortion clinic next door to them.
And you can't be affiliated with hospitals. Hospitals
Right.
are saying we don't want anything to do with you.
So
Exactly.
this project, like some of the other projects that we advocate, really increases the stigma and discourages people in the medical community from getting involved, regardless of what their political position on abortion is.
Right.
I don't care if a doctor out there is a pro-abort. If he's not doing abortions, I'm happy, Or if an existing abortionist says, these people have turned up the heat so much, it's not worth it anymore, I'm quitting. I'm not going to do any more abortions. I'm still pro-choice, but I'm not doing any more abortions. You know what? Those babies still survive.
Exactly.
No matter what he thinks. So this is a very good project, and I want to encourage everybody out there. And if you're interested in being involved in something like this, be sure and call me or Renee, and just let us know, and we will help you with the letter that you need to send out and tell you how to do it and give you a lot of helpful hints on how to make the project very successful. But we've used it many times, and it works.
We want to be a thorn in their side across the United States.
Absolutely, and that's kind of one of our goals here at LifeTalk. Right? Anyway, we're about out of time, but you had, Sheila said, we can't get off the show without giving her a chance to talk about this deal.
Very humorous, I must
Very
say.
humorous.
I would be friends with this guy. So a pro-life politician in Australia.
Member of Parliament.
He during one meeting he said that he was declaring himself female, so he could talk about abortion. So in the past he's tried talking about abortion and raising pro-life initiatives and stuff, and he's basically just been shut down by abortion advocates and by other politicians that are saying, hey, you can't talk about this. You're a man, you have no right.
Right.
And so the other day he said, well, you know what? I'm going to say that I'm a female then.
We know
yeah.
that's their
Yeah.
position, right? You can
Yeah.
declare your gender. Right?
So he said, you know what? I'm going to call myself a female so I can finally talk about it.
That is great.
What's
Awesome.
What's interesting about this is, first off, the so-called women's movement in this country, the leftists, their argument always was that we should not be barred from being involved in an issue just because of our gender. But all of a sudden,
When it comes to abortion and having uterus and carrying babies,
they pull out the vagina card.
Yeah, keep your rosaries off my ovaries
well,
and
I'm
all
not
of that
interested in their
nonsense.
ovaries. But it's interesting that they push this paradigm that we're not supposed to discriminate against people politically based on their gender, but then that's the exact same thing they do when it comes to abortion.
Yeah.
It's also interesting to point out, I have never once, in all the years that I've heard this argument being made, I've never heard it once being used against a man who's pro-abortion. I've never heard them say to Bill Clinton, you can't speak about abortion. They don't say that to Barack Obama.
Obama, yeah.
The pro-choicers.
The pro-aborts don't say that
Right.
to any so it's only pro-life men that are barred, not pro-abortion men, and not any women. And I've also wondered too, if the reason is that you can't speak about abortion because of your gender is because you can't get pregnant, that would be the obvious conclusion, right? What about women that can't get pregnant?
Yeah.
There's a lot of women out there who cannot get pregnant if they've had a hysterectomy or they have some naturally occurring problem, or let's say that they're gay. Two women are gay and they're saying, we're never going to adopt a baby, and obviously we're never going to have one. Do they not get to talk about it too?
Yeah.
So how far do you take this? But the what I call the godless left in this country has no. Not only do they have no morals, they have no logic, and this is a good example of it.
Yes, it is.
But how far do you take this?
Yeah. Well, this politician obviously, took it to the next level.
Yeah. And he's facing the same thing down there,
Yeah.
where they're saying, "Oh, you can declare whatever gender you want to be. That's what you are." Right?
So, okay, I'm going to do that.
I'm
and,
female today, and I can switch back tonight when I go home. Or,
Right.
You know
yeah.
what?
I mean, my wife probably won't want me to stay female here.
Right. But anyway, I thought it was pretty clever, the guy to say, okay, then I'm female. Now, let's talk about abortion. Oh, by the way, I'm a female pro-lifer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, it's pretty clever.
Yes, it is.
Anyway, anything else? Y'all
I don't
got?
have anything else on here. Just send us your show ideas. You can call or email or text or however, well, not text, I don't guess, but call or email and you will get this mug for giving us your show ideas if we use them.
Yep. And that's about it. We got anything off
I don't know.
nothing off the internet or?
Nope.
Nope,
Okay.
nothing that.
People are watching though. We know that.
Yes, they are.
Anyway, if you have anything to add to the show, be sure and let Renee know. And until next Tuesday, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing stops. We'll see you next week.